In the previous episode of Satansplain, we explored the notion of religious denominations and how various groups being labeled as Satanism are not, in fact, different denominations of the same religion. In this episode, we'll continue that exploration with a look at alleged satanic groups formed since the founding of the Church of Satan, especially in the age of the Internet. No, it's still not analogous to Catholics arguing with Protestants.
Well, it's not Satan worship, it's Satanism. It's embracing the life-enriching things which have traditionally been given the devil's name. Pride, lust, earthly success, rational self-interest, atheism, humor, nonconformity, science, a passion for living, being selective about whom we love. We don't see these as shameful sins, but empowering ideals. And we also recognize the psychological power and fun of symbolism and aesthetics, so we utilize Satan as mythology's most fitting mascot for what we're about.
Satansplain, Satanic Talk with Church of Satan Magister Bill M.
Because Anton LaVey made Satanism so popular, everybody has been wanting to jump on the bandwagon. That is the opening line to an essay called The Satanic Bunko Sheet, available on churchofsatan.com. I had mentioned it at the start of the previous episode of Satansplain, and the reason I'm mentioning it again now is because, as we'll see in this episode of Satansplain, it sums things up pretty well. In the previous episode of Satansplain, we talked about Satanism, what makes it a religion, and the phenomenon in general of religious denominations or religious sects, and that's S-E-C-T-S, sex, of course. If you want a Satansplain talk on sex sex, well, see Satansplain episode number 69 for that. But in that previous episode number 71 of Satansplain, we also saw that what may appear to the layman as different denominations of Satanism are not, in fact, that. If you have not listened to episode number 71 yet, I suggest you stop this episode now and listen to that first. But like before, you'll find some timestamps in this episode's description if you want to navigate to different parts. I'm going to try to summarize a few key points from that episode, though, and insert a couple of related points I did not get to. Before the Church of Satan was founded in 1966, the word Satanism was essentially just a pejorative used by Christians to describe any number of practices they didn't like. Many Christians still carelessly use the word like that today, to the point where some even accuse other Christians of being Satanists, despite the fact that there really is now a religion called Satanism with people who identify as Satanists, and it has been established for some time now. So it's not simply a word for anybody you dislike. In fact, when we look at the various people or groups from before 1966 labeled as Satanists or having practiced Satanism, we don't find much of any consistency among them. We see some mystics, some occultists, some devil worshippers, some blasphemous aristocrats, and a lot of people merely being accused of being in line with the devil because Christians found them eccentric or whatever. What we do not find in those prior centuries is some actual spelled-out religion that they were all being denominations of, let alone one calling itself Satanism. So although non-Satanists may see these various groups with inverted pentagrams and think they're looking at different denominations of the same religion, this is not the case at all. Furthermore, pointing out this fact is not some act of religious zealotry on my part. It's not a no true Scotsman fallacy. Like all religions, philosophies, or ideologies, Satanism has some very specific defining characteristics and doctrines, and if your own beliefs and practices are fundamentally contrary to those, it's simply inaccurate to use the same label to describe them. So pointing out that these other groups are not practicing Satanism is not akin to a Scotsman declaring that a Scotsman who puts sugar on his porridge is somehow not a true Scotsman. No. It's more like the Scottish embassy trying to explain why wrapping a roll of Scotch tape around a person doesn't suddenly make them a Scotsman. The people who whine that I'm a gatekeeper seem to be under this illusion that when I point out no, Satanism is this and it's not that I'm somehow opposing their freedom of religion. They will claim that they have an inherent right, sometimes they'll say, to have Satanism be anything they want. And if I disagree, well, then I'm just being oppressive, or even a fascist, or even unsatanic because, I'm enforcing rules, and Satanism, don't you know, is supposedly all about having no rules. No, this is just stupid. It has nothing to do with freedom of religion. It's about the practical use of consistency in language. I suppose you also have the freedom to refer to a skateboard as a Lamborghini, but if you place an ad in the paper saying you're selling a Lamborghini, and I see your ad and I meet up with you only to find out it's a skateboard, well, I'm rightfully going to think you're just being a jackass, or you're insane. No, Bill, I have freedom of speech. Well, I'm not buying your skateboard, nor am I buying your argument. Freedom of religion doesn't grant you some special right to fuck around with the language like this on a whim and expect an already established religious group to widen the definition of their religion to until it's almost meaningless, just so they can include you under the same umbrella, just to accommodate your absurdities. This whole idea of this fierce relativist attitude, this postmodernism idea of every opinion being valid and so on, is something I was originally planning on exploring as its own Satansplain episode. Maybe some other time, maybe that will be part 3. But getting back to this concept of religious denominations, in the previous episode I explained that in order for 2 different practices to be considered denominations of the same religion, you at least have to have that religion's core beliefs in common. We know that Catholics and Protestants and Baptists and so on are types of Christians, meaning denominations of Christianity, because despite their differences between each other, they all still believe in the same core and defining religious dogma that's specific to Christianity. But when we look at the various groups labeling themselves or being labeled by others as Satanism, we don't see any kind of common dogma like this. Therefore, there's really no reason to view them as different denominations of the same religion. They're too inherently dissimilar. So likewise, I don't use the term LaVeyan Satanism to distinguish myself from these other people. The term is redundant. The name of the religion established by Anton LaVey is simply called Satanism. Using terms like LaVeyan Satanism or Theistic Satanism only add to the confusion by implying that all of these other groups who have nothing to do with us are denominations of the same religion. And when, as I've been showing in these past 2 episodes of Satansplain, they are not. By the way, if for some reason you still really want to have some kind of umbrella term for all religious groups who happen to sport an inverted pentagram, well, try the term left-hand path religions. That's better than trying to call all of those religions different types of Satanism, because they're not. Also, as I pointed out in the previous episode, as for where Satanism as a religion really comes from, Anton LaVey was the first to establish such a thing, and what he established was indeed a religion, not just an assortment of blasphemous rituals and strange symbols, but a codified ideology with a philosophy, an ethics code, and dogma. In short, a religion. I start every episode of Satansplain with a pre-recorded 30-second explanation of what Satanism is, in my own words, and why it's called that. This religion has been established for a few generations now, which is why we, the Church of Satan, the ones who established that, are in the rightful position to call out people erroneously slapping the name of our religion on things that don't match its description at all. Once again, it is not religious zealotry or religious fundamentalism to say, this is what our religion is about, and that thing you're calling our religion obviously is not it. All right, moving on. So in this episode, we're now going to look at groups formed in the years since the Church of Satan was formed. First, to be clear, some of the arguments I presented in the previous episode regarding supposedly satanic groups or individuals from before 1966 also apply to many groups formed after 1966. For example, there have been many people or groups in modern times accused of being Satanists when they never personally identified as Satanists in the first place. Whether they were accused by evangelical Christians or reported that way in the media, I don't think these cases are relevant here. We're trying to get to the bottom of what this religion is and whether it has subgroups that can rightfully be considered religious denominations. So, accusations in this case don't really tell us anything. Likewise, I don't care about Christians who claim things like, well, if you're an atheist, then you're denying God, and that means you're worshiping Satan, whether you're aware of it or not. So that's Satanism. No, that's just a stupid notion, and I reject it. If we're going to stretch the meaning of words like worship to fit accusations and say it's the same as sincere devotion, we're not going to get anywhere with any kind of understanding of this. Now, it's true that you can look at certain people in history and say, well, philosophically speaking, this person seemed pretty satanic. Their attitudes, their views, and their way of life seemed very much in line with what's in the Satanic Bible, even if they didn't have the name for it at the time. So you can do that. We refer to those sorts of people as de facto Satanists. Maybe that's something we can talk about in a future episode of Satansplain. But again, if we're trying to get to the bottom of an actual practiced religion with actual religious denominations, we should really just focus on the people who call themselves by that religion's name, the people who call themselves Satanists and or are purporting to practice something called Satanism. So having said all of that, what about these other groups besides the Church of Satan who purport to be satanic organizations? Or likewise groups who have existed anywhere between 1966 and the present day who claim to be practicing a different type of Satanism than the one practiced by the Church of Satan. Well, if I had to sum up my observation of them, I'd say they all fall into one of two categories. One, groups whose beliefs are radically different from Satanism to the point where they contradict Satanism on a fundamental level, and thus I see no justification for considering them and the Church of Satan to be two different denominations of the same religion. They're just two different religions, despite maybe at best having some of the same jewelry in common, some of the same ritual props. But the other category that a lot of these other organizations fall into, I would say, are groups who, seem to believe in Satanism as I understand it, and their definition of Satanism seems to match the sort of thing you hear in the 30-second introduction to Satansplain. But, in short, I don't see any real justification for calling what they're doing a new denomination of Satanism, or why they need a new organization to do what they do. Quite honestly, the things they claim to be doing differently are either things which members of the Church of Satan are already free to do if they wish, whether that's holding a certain political view or a hobby or interest that might fall under the category of supernormal or whatever. Sometimes it's not even clear what their differences are. I'll go to a website claiming to be a new denomination of Satanism, and I'll read through it, and it's just word salad. In many cases, some of these people just have an axe to grind with the Church of Satan for what seems to be childish reasons. Maybe they lost an argument on a message board somewhere, or even used to be members of the Church of Satan themselves, but were thrown out for being insufferable assholes to other members. Sometimes they expect the Church of Satan as an organization to do things which, for practical reasons, we don't do, like publicly condoning criminal activity or demanding all of our members vote a certain way or all our members spend their free time in a certain way. In any case, it's not clear to me what new thing these so-called satanic groups have to offer, which would warrant declaring a whole new denomination of Satanism, or an organization to replace the Church of Satan. Before we go any further, there are one or two related arguments that I hear every now and then, which some people use to try and justify fitting all these unrelated groups under an umbrella called Satanism. One of them is the dictionary argument. Somebody will say, well, I have a dictionary, and it says right in the dictionary that Satanism is worship of the devil, so that means I'm right on what Satanism is, and you're wrong. And I wrote a whole essay on this stupid argument, which you can find on churchofsatan.com. It's an essay titled, Fine, Let's Play the Dictionary Game. I also covered this in Satansplain episode number 51. So if you want to hear why this argument is invalid, go there. For that matter, I've heard some people try to argue, well, the name Satan means the adversary, and I'm being adversarial, so therefore I'm being satanic. I'm practicing Satanism. Again, no, Satanism is not merely just being adversarial. If you're protesting, I don't know, a politician or whatever, that doesn't mean what you're doing is Satanism because it's adversarial. If adversarialism were all there was to Satanism, the Satanic Bible would be just a page long. But likewise, some may argue, well, Bill, you say that all these religions have nothing in common, but they do have something in common. All of these types of Satanism, they all have Satan in common. Just like how Christianity is a religion about Christ, and Buddhism is a religion about Buddha, well, Satanism is just any religion about Satan. That's what it is. Anton LaVey didn't invent it, so that means devil worshippers and the Church of Satan, Satanic Temple, and all these groups really are denominations of the same religion. Okay, a few problems with this. First of all, regarding the name Satan, Satan is not a character like Jesus or Buddha, where there are scriptures taken as an official biography, if you will, with complete stories and sermons and the like. If somebody says, I follow Christ, or somebody says, that person follows Buddha, that implies they're basing their beliefs around some particularly well-known and historically famous set of religious scriptures. But if somebody says, that person follows Satan, we don't know if that's an insult or what they really mean. Now, you could argue that there have been people who wrote stories about the devil doing this or that, whether it's Paradise Lost or Faust or American folklore stories about the devil helping out musicians at the crossroads, or even episodes of South Park. But even though there are some people who believe some of these stories are true, it doesn't change the fact that that's not religious scripture. It's a mix of unrelated stories about the devil. Now, that's fine if you as a Satanist, you like some of these stories. I like some of them, and maybe you find something inspiring or relatable to them, but it's still not satanic religious canon. Likewise, we do have examples of pagan mythologies about various deities of a more dark or malevolent nature, and some people have tried to retroactively name that Satanism, as well as Christian propaganda or folklore about devil worshippers or witches and what they supposedly do. But in all these cases, again, nothing like the major religions, where we can trace back all of the denominations of a given religion back to some core religion they're all derived from. On top of that, if you're going to try to define Satanism as anybody who praises Satan, then that doesn't actually describe a religion. Because, again, that could mean any number of things, including some things that aren't even religions per se. So this, again, is why the Protestants versus Catholics comparison is not analogous at all. You can just look at our religion's literature and what we believe, and compare that to what most of these other groups believe. And if you're honest and objective, you will come to the conclusion that they are too dissimilar to be considered denominations of the same religion. Okay, now, finally, as promised, let's pick up where we left off at the end of episode 71. In the previous episode, we talked about the alleged manifestations of Satanism before 1966. Once again, we see no examples of an actual codified religion calling itself Satanism prior to the Church of Satan. We finished with a talk about Anton LaVey and the Church of Satan in 1966 and what exactly it was he established, and also the justification for us using that for the working definition of Satanism. So, what sorts of so-called satanic people and groups have shown up on the scene since 1966? And again, let's try to focus on just the groups who actually identify as Satanists, and then further narrow it down to two categories. Those who do not share the core ideas of what we believe, and in no way are derived from what Anton LaVey established, and those who can trace back their idea of Satanism to Anton LaVey, or at least they say so, at least in part. All right, well, let's first address that first category, since this is pretty easy. Taking the name of an established religion and throwing that label on some unrelated belief system is not creating a new denomination of that religion. It's just parasitically taking a label because you like it. I'm sorry if you're sick of hearing me say this, but I'll say it one more time. If what you believe is fundamentally too dissimilar to what a particular established religion or ideology declares, then you can't really justify calling it just a variation of the same thing. It's not the same thing. It's not a different flavor of the same thing. It's a different thing. The most glaring example are organizations who profess to believe in Satan as a literal supernatural being. Beliefs like this go directly against central dogmas of Satanism. In Satanism, we say all gods are the invention of the human imagination. We say humans are just animals. We say that the God of the Satanist is the self. If you show me a group who believes that they can commune with a literal supernatural Satan and believes he has thoughts of his own and directly communicates, not unlike how monotheistic religions believe that their God speaks to them and can answer prayers and so on, then again, this is fundamentally different than what I describe in the 30-second intro to Satansplain. This is not a case of, oh, they're just following the same central dogma of Satanism, and they just have a different interpretation than you, Bill. You know, like the Protestants do with the Holy Bible and Christianity. No. These are not people who took our 9 satanic statements, 11 satanic rules of the earth, and the 9 satanic sins, and said, well, we believe these too, we just have a different interpretation of them. No, these are people who threw all of that out and are throwing the label of Satanism on something else. Something which does not trace back to Anton LaVeyan, but may in fact trace back to, ironically enough, Christian propaganda. If you really do believe in and revere Satan as a literal supernatural deity, then at least have the honesty to call your practice something else other than Satanism. In fact, if you do some digging, you'll find such groups. There are theistic groups out there who may call themselves Luciferians or demonolatrists or left-hand path occultists or something else. So go find one of them. As long as you're not taking the name of my religion and erroneously throwing it on yourself, then I don't care. Rather than trying to ride off the popularity and cultural zing of the word Satanism and cause confusion everywhere when you show up in the presence of other Satanists and use the term to mean something different, just be honest with yourself and use a different term. It would be more productive for you, wouldn't it? You'll find more like-minded people that way, and you'll stop running into people like me, and you'll save a lot of confusion for everybody, including yourself. On the topic of theistic groups, though, people who believe in deities, there is one more related thing I want to address, and this is a topic that I have a whole separate episode of Satansplain addressing. That's episode number 16 on atheism and Satanism. You see, I've met some people in recent years who claim that the Church of Satan used to officially take a deist view, that is, the belief that a creation deity exists. He created the universe or the earth and all that, but then he left it alone. So he exists, but he doesn't play any actual role in human affairs. And these people claim that this was the original position of the Church of Satan, and then that no good big meanie high priest Peter H. Gilmore then somehow officially changed the organization's position from deism to atheism. I have also seen some claim that Anton LaVeyan was not an atheist, but secretly a theist who believed in Satan in the literal supernatural sense, or not so secretly believed this, and that once again this was changed, and therefore that's their justification to say, well, we need to set up a new denomination of Satanism and separate that organization and go back to this old belief allegedly held by the Church of Satan before the year 2001, or before 1975, or whatever. Well, this is simply all bullshit. The people who make these claims seem to have a real problem with reading comprehension. You can usually see this in the way they type, too. The people I see making these claims almost always have really sloppy typing. They're pretty scatterbrained. They type faster than they think. In some cases, they even misspelled their organization's name in the URL of their official website. And in any case, not much of an ability to pick up on LaVeyan's use of sarcasm or hyperbole in some of his writings. These are all sorts of traits that show up a lot with conspiracy theorists, I've noticed. But anyway, going to the deism versus atheism example, these people say, well, if you look at the Satanic Bible, the opening line of the Book of Lucifer is, "It is a misconception that the Satanist does not believe in God." And to which I say, yeah, that's true. But if you keep reading, LaVeyan says that whether you call forces of nature God, or by some other name, I would say, for example, the hand of fate, or by no name at all, and that would be atheism, the bottom line is that there is no personal God out there watching over us who cares about it all. LaVeyan clearly says on the same page, gods are the creation of man, not vice versa. They are the byproduct of the human imagination. Now, can you be a Church of Satan member and be a deist? I guess so. I don't see why not. Let's say you're a Satanist and you're philosophically in line with the Satanic Bible, and you additionally believe that the universe was created by a deity who does not get involved with humans beyond that. Well, I'm a Satanist who also is in line with the Satanic Bible, but I additionally do not believe the universe was created by a deity. Do either of us worship an external God? No. Do either of us believe in a personal God who answers prayers and cares that we follow certain rules in life? No. Do either of us disagree with the 9 Satanic Statements or 11 Satanic Rules of the Earth? No. So, who the hell cares if we have different answers on the origins of the universe? It's an irrelevant question in Satanism. Satanism is a carnal religion, and who or what made the universe is irrelevant to living life as a Satanist. You don't need a new denomination or organization for that opinion. And some people will say, well, I'm not atheist. I don't like the word atheist, but I'm not a theist either. See, I'm an agnostic, and Satanism should be agnostic because nobody knows for sure. No. You are an atheist. You're more specifically an agnostic atheist. And whoever told you that agnosticism is some sort of halfway point between theism and atheism, or a third alternative to the two, well, they lied to you. See Satansplain episode number 16 for details. Now, if we're approached by a journalist looking for a soundbite, or a Christian who is accusing us of being devil worshippers, then rather than trying to explain all of those intricacies I've just been rambling about for the last minute or two, doesn't it make much more sense to just use the 2-word response, "We're atheists"? Sure, it oversimplifies an odd technicality, but the statement debunks way more misinformation than it creates. And as for this notion that LaVeyan was not an atheist but secretly believed in a deity, again, this has been routinely debunked. See Satansplain episode number 16, or search for the word atheist on Satansplain.com. You can find a post titled Anton LaVeyan was an atheist and Satanism is a non-theistic religion. This does not warrant a new denomination or organization. These are people who just can't read. So I've talked enough about theistic groups and why there's no reason to consider them to be different denominations of Satanism. Well, what about non-theistic groups? We'll talk about them after the break.
You are listening to Satansplain, real satanic talk with Church of Satan Magister Bill M. For questions, comments, and correspondence, send an email to bill@satansplain.com.
Do satanic cults lurk in the shadows? Can memories of satanic ritual abuse be repressed? Do exorcisms really drive out demons? And are those demons always possessing Zach Baggins? I'm JD Sword, the Satanic Skeptic. Join me on The Devil in the Details as I examine these questions and more, bringing a skeptical and satanic perspective to the paranormal. The Devil in the Details, available on Apple Podcast, Google Podcast, Spotify, and more.
handmade, all-natural botanical perfumes, soaps, and ceremonial incense, sculptures and jewelry to adorn yourself and your other altars. All this and more await you at moonandsunemporium.com. Ritual perfumes and other occult fine art luxuries, created and curated by me, Priestess Sarah Josephine Clark, with tarot readings by Reverend Dr. Dylan Clark. moonandsunemporium.com.
Magister Bill M. here with Satansplain. Visit the main website for the show at satansplain.com. There you can find every Satansplain episode. You can also listen to Satansplain on Spotify, YouTube, Audible, and a host of other places. If you are on social media, please give Satansplain a like and a follow, or whatever the equivalent is, on Facebook, X, and YouTube. Likewise, if you are listening now on YouTube, don't forget to hit that like button for this episode. For all questions and correspondence, you can email me directly. bill@satansplain.com is the email address. And if you enjoy Satansplain and would like to support the show, please go to the show's page on Locals. Point your web browsers to satansplain.locals.com. You can sign up for Locals for free, but you can also additionally become a paid subscriber there. We also have a merch store. You can go to store.satansplain.com for that. And thank you, as always, to all of you who support the show in one way or another. So there are groups who, like the Church of Satan, have a non-theistic worldview, utilizing Satan merely as a symbol or a metaphor. First of all, notice that this notion of being an atheist and a self-proclaimed Satanist is something that seemingly didn't exist before the Church of Satan. But as for these groups who espouse this idea, can they be considered denominations of this same religion, Satanism? Well, my answer to that is let's look at what else they profess to believe. As I already explained, worshiping a deity besides yourself is certainly a disqualifier for being aligned with Satanism, but there's much more to Satanism than just being an atheist, or again, if you want to harp on the deism thing, some kind of non-theist. There are atheists, for example, who definitely are not Satanists. They may agree with the Satanic Bible insofar as it says gods are the invention of man, but then they might not agree with much of anything else in the book, and thus not much of anything else with Satanism. To illustrate this point, let me address what many may say is a big elephant in the room, and that is a particular tax shelter organization created and led by prank filmmaker Cevin Soling. You may have heard of this group before. They're called the Satanic Temple. And when I do run into somebody who whines at me, calls me a gatekeeper, and gives me the ever so tiresome argument of, you're like a Catholic saying Protestants are not true Christians, it's more often than not somebody from the Satanic Temple. Well, my rant on the Satanic Temple and why they're not Satanists is enough to be its own episode. And I'll save some of that ranting for when we do a Satansplain episode looking at the 7 tenets. But regarding whether the Satanic Temple and the Church of Satan are two different denominations of Satanism, the answer is no. The Satanic Temple, to put it bluntly, is a troll group of political activists who dress up as Satanists for political stunts, solely to bait and troll and harass Christians in public. These are not people who took a look at the Satanic Bible and thought, well, we just have a different interpretation than you. No, these are people who, first of all, originally professed to believe in a literal supernatural Satan. You can look at archived copies of their website to confirm this. You don't have to take my word for it. They even did protests with hired actors, professing to be devil worshippers, and then a year or two later, they pulled a 180 and said they're atheists. Well, regardless, as a Satanist, I reject their list of 7 vague platitudes which have nothing to do with Satanism. I reject, for example, the notion of empathy for everybody. I adhere to Satanic Statement number 4, kindness to those who deserve it, instead of love wasted on ingrates. So when these 7 tenets came out, it seemed obvious to most everybody at the time that this was a group trying to play some ironic hipster game. In this case, claiming to be aligned with Satan, but then having overly wholesome sentiments like, our goal is empathy and justice for all. You know, things along those lines. So the purpose being to bait Christians into attacking you and then make them look like the bad guys for attacking something wholesome. Except it seems that in the end, the Satanic Temple ended up having members who, unironically, bought into their own pranks they created. And the only other thing I'll add for now as to why there's no reason to consider the Satanic Temple to be just another denomination of the same religion as me is that they honestly don't seem to have a religion. Oh, sure, they take up the name of a religion people have heard of. They threaten to insert this religion in public spaces by doing satanic parodies of what certain Christians do, monuments, philanthropy events, prayers at government meetings, and so on. Things which, by the way, really aren't found in the doctrines of Satanism at all. But again, if you try to look beyond their costume, do they even have a religion? The Satanic Temple claims to have a quote-unquote vast literary canon, but it seems to be just a list of older books with stories of Satan in them and maybe some political books, but no real consistency to them. In any case, a recommended book list is not some religious canon, by the way. In fact, I doubt many members of the Satanic Temple could name 5 books of their own supposed canon, let alone have read them. Also, if you're going to go from worshiping a literal Satan to claiming you're atheists, then it sounds to me like you're just making things up as you go along. So that's not like the Catholic Church deciding after thousands of years to have the Vatican II Council and revamp the Mass to use English instead of Latin, and the priest facing this way instead of that way. No, it's not an evolution or anything. It's going from theism to atheism in the course of a year. It's just pulling a ridiculous 180. In fact, if you go to the Satanic Temple's official FAQ, it says right in there that even if you have any sort of supernatural beliefs, they don't care what those are if you want to join their organization. They don't even have to identify as a Satanist. It's not a requirement. They gave a membership, for example, to the person who helped them with their 90-minute commercial disguised as a documentary, Hail Satan. When they were building their Baphomet statue, they used the site Indiegogo to raise money for it. And if you donated $1,000 or more, they gave you a membership. I've even run into people who say they're Christians and joined the Satanic Temple because they believe their mission statement. Now, is there a chance that this last example of people I ran into were just trolls themselves and lying, maybe trying to troll the Satanic Temple back? Well, maybe. But the fact that nothing from the Satanic Temple itself seems to say this is incompatible, I think says a lot. Again, the Satanic Temple is not a denomination of Satanism. In fact, it doesn't even seem to be a religion at all. Just a political troll group who dresses up as Satanists to bait and harass Christians. Well, enough about Cevin Soling and company, because groups who've taken up the label of Satanism post-LaVeyan are a dime a dozen. Off the top of my head, I can easily name over a dozen other groups with similar names, which I've seen over the years. Temple of Set, Church of Satanic Liberation, Modern Church of Satan, Traditional Church of Satan, Church of Satan, The Church of Satan, with 2-letter E's in the word the Ancient Brotherhood of Satan, Church of Rational Satanism, First Church of Satan, First Satanic Church, The Satanic Church, The Satanic Order, Order of the Trapezoid, Global Order of Satan, Joy of Satan, Temple of the Black Light, Sect of the Horn God, Synagogue of Satan, Order of Nine Angles, Synagogue of Satan, that was a different group with the same exact name, Temple of Lucifer, Satanic Collective, Satanic Temple International, Satanic Allies, and the list goes on and on and on. Now, when I first discovered Satanism and decided that it was a religion for me, I went online and ran into all sorts of names like this. And frankly, I didn't know what to make of them at first. I'm sure that's the same case with many Satanists who are new to Satanism today. I had certainly known about the Church of Satan because it was the Satanic Bible that really brought me onto this left-hand path. And the Church of Satan was, of course, the organization who created and still at that time was led by the book's author. But what about all of those other groups? Did any of them have something to offer which might be better suited for me? So I tried to see what these groups were all about. First of all, I noticed that some of these groups were professing things that simply did not line up with what I believed. Most notably, groups who profess to believe in a literal Satan. For example, the Temple of Set. This is a group that was founded by ex-members of the Church of Satan back in 1975, led by a guy who claimed to have gotten a direct revelation from the supernatural Satan himself in the form of the Egyptian god Set. This guy would even be online in all of these Satanism message boards trying to recruit people. Well, needless to say, I wasn't interested in the Temple of Set or similar groups who professed some completely different beliefs from me. Though, to their credit, it seems that the Temple of Set has, in more recent years, distanced themselves from the word Satanism and more accurately refers to their practice as Setianism, or so I hear. I wish I could say the same about some of those other groups I listed. Now, I did, however, see other groups claiming to practice Satanism as I understood it, so I wanted to see what it was that they did, which was so different from the Church of Satan. And my observation at the time was, these mostly seem to be people who spent all their time talking about heavy metal and how much they hated Anton LaVeyan and the Church of Satan. I honestly didn't see anything that these groups had to offer which the Church of Satan couldn't, and today I still don't. Now, there are people who argue, well, Bill, all religions evolve. This is just the natural order of things. We saw it happen with Christianity when Catholicism gave way to the Protestant Reformation. There's that Catholics versus Protestants comparison again. Okay, when we look at the world's major religions and the denominations that they've since split into, the changes didn't happen, overnight, or within the course of, a year. The Protestant Reformation, for example, didn't start until Christianity had already been around for almost a millennium and a half. And around that time, you also had the printing press, an invention which changed the world because people could now read the Bible for themselves instead of having clergy tell them what was in it. And Martin Luther had also decreed that the Catholic Church was getting too wrapped up in this and that, and we're losing the biblical notion of that and that. And again, that was all after a good 1,500 years, with a Bible that is so full of translations and translations, translations, and multiple authors compiled over centuries, and stories where it's not clear if it's meant to be literal history or allegory. So much so that, yeah, I can see why you'd wind up having different groups with different interpretations. Now then, compare this to the Church of Satan. The Church of Satan has been around, at the time of this recording, close to 60 years. That's long enough to say that the religion they've established is an established one. It's not going away anytime soon. But it's not centuries. It's not so long that it would go through the same sort of changes we might expect a religion and a religious organization to end up having over the course of 1,000 years. The Church of Satan was founded in an age of technology. We have video and audio interviews of Anton LaVey. We have people alive today who knew him personally. Not quite the same case with Jesus or Abraham or Muhammad. Likewise with the Satanic Bible and other Satanic literature, this is not something that lends itself to the same level of interpretation like the Holy Bible does. The Satanic Bible is not some ancient oral tradition that was collected later on scrolls, spanning centuries, then put through numerous translations and as lines where we may never completely know what the author may have meant, like if the stories or objects are meant to be taken as literal history or just parables to teach a lesson. No, the Satanic Bible was written in modern English in the 20th century, reproduced with electronic printing presses. It's written in a style where there's clearly some hyperbole and some poetic stuff, but for the most part, it's written in straightforward English essays. We can go back to the book's first edition. We can see that aside from some of the introduction pages before the book really begins, there's no difference between the first edition and the latest one and the ones in between. After Anton LaVey published the Satanic Bible in 1969, he lived for almost another close to 30 years, doing recorded interviews and writing more and clarifying any doubts about what he meant and didn't mean. And to this day, there is still the occasional person who finds the book, reads it, and concludes, hey, this speaks to me. I am a Satanist. I knew where my convictions were. I was just missing the picture of how it all fits together. And even in the case where you do find something in the Satanic Bible that can be applied in a different way, or find that different Satanists place different levels of personal importance on some parts they read over others, well, so what? This is what all Satanists do. It doesn't mean you have to create a whole new organization and a whole new type of Satanism to do it. So again, have you really evolved anything here by making a new organization or a new type of Satanism? Or is it, like I said at the beginning of the episode, are you just jumping on the bandwagon of this label of Satanist without anything really all that new or revolutionary or different to offer? I know several episodes back I talked about an infographic I saw from somebody claiming to have created a new type of Satanism called eco-Satanism. And you see, it was Satanism with a heavy focus on environmentalism. To which I say, okay, but that's indistinguishable from a Satanist who just happens to be really, really into environmentalism. I could see a Satanist, say, writing an article about that, maybe a blog, or, maybe even in a podcast about environmentalism, but from a satanic perspective. Maybe you can do a satanic ritual that incorporates that theme. But it's still not a new denomination of Satanism. It's just you doing Satanism and applying it in your life in your way. And if other Satanists do not particularly share that passion of yours, what do you care? What would you demand they do? And this also ties in with another theme I've seen here and there, which is trying to collectively do a cause to make the world a better place in the name of Satanism. That seems contradictory to me. Now, as Satanists, we do want to make the world a better place insofar as we want what's best for ourselves as individuals. And if, for you, you feel that a better ecosystem is a big part of that, or voting for some particular politician will help you, or donating your time and money to some charity or cause is what's in your best interest, will make your world a better place, well then, satanically speaking, that's fine. There are Satanists who do that. But to publicly and loudly stand in solidarity with a cause as Satanists, collectively in the name of Satanism, yelling it from the rooftops, that doesn't make much sense to me. Satanism is an adversarial religion. We're not looking to be a community in that societal integrated sense. We are Satanists. Furthermore, no political or social cause has ever been helped by being seen in public with Satanists on their team. So far as the human herd is concerned, Satanists are the bad guys. I don't know why there are so many self-declared Satanists who don't understand this. If you had 20 Satanists, for example, who were passionate about environmental causes, well, it would be way more productive and effective for those 20 Satanists to tuck in their pentagram necklaces and help out an existing, well-established environmental organization, say. That would be more helpful than 40 Satanists trying to make a new eco-Satanism organization and standing in solidarity in public next to Greta Thunberg. In fact, that sounds like a prank that right-wing people would do to try to discredit Greta Thunberg, don't you think? Some of these groups try making Satanism the cause in and of itself. They'll say, we have been oppressed for too long. We must band together and rise up, all of us together, all brothers and sisters of the left-hand path. The LaVeyan Satanists, the Theistic Satanists, the blue, the green Satanists, the yellow polka-dotted Satanists. We have to all put our differences aside and join together as one satanic army and defeat the oppressive Christians once and for all. Well, I've seen more than a few people try this angle of, let's call it ecumenical Satanism, and not surprisingly, it never really goes anywhere. First of all, speaking for myself, I'm not going to join up with devil worshippers, and likewise most of them have no desire of joining up with people like me. Second of all, we're back to the problem of what different Satanists find to be worth their time fighting. I personally don't feel at all threatened from evangelical Christians. Yeah, there are a number of dangerous Christian zealots out there. I can't deny that. And yeah, their powers should be kept in check. But I live my life in such a way that I don't have to put up with their bullshit. Or it's very minimal. And I say this as somebody who is politically right of center. There are some conservative commentators I listen to, and I may roll my eyes hard on the occasion that they get into their religious bullshit. But this is not something I lose sleep over. Now, that's just me. If that's not the case for you, and you feel this is a battle you want to fight, go ahead. But maybe you'll be more effective if you join an atheist organization or some other secular organization already dedicated to that. There's a Church of Satan member, for example, Warlock J.D. Sword, who writes for a Skeptic magazine and or Skeptical Inquirer, I think it is, and there are some others I know who are similarly actively involved in secular organizations like Atheists United for the Separation of Church and State. And to me, that seems much more effective than trying to get all of the left-hand path religions together, which even altogether would still be a minority, and then try to demand things from people who are too fanatically religious to listen, and may wonder what an explicitly adversarial group like the Satanists are demanding a fair share of and why. So what are some other reasons I've heard for thinking there needs to be a new satanic organization? Somebody will say they like LaVeyan, but they also like Crowley and some other occultists. So they want to combine all these things and somehow still keep it under the label of Satanism. Well, it's fine in Satanism if you want to borrow ideas from certain works of fiction or other cultures or other occult religions for that matter, and put it in a ritualistic setting. The book, The Satanic Rituals, is full of such examples. The Church of Satan does not say you can't read Crowley or Dennis Wheatley or Scott Cunningham or whoever. However, trying to play the cafeteria religion game, the buffet religion game, doing a mishmash of stuff, and then trying to declare it a new offshoot of Satanism, that doesn't really work. You can listen to Satansplain episode number 56 for more on that. You may think you're doing something exceptionally special, but honestly, you're not. And if you are, why use the name Satanism? Why not call it something new? I've seen some people who take issue with the Church of Satan's position of not having an official political position, or not having a grotto system anymore, or even not condoning illegal activity. I'd say we take these positions because to do otherwise, we would just be creating more problems than we need. I've already talked about politics, and also the ability of Church of Satan members to meet up with other members, to do other things together if they wish. You don't need a local grotto in your city to do that in 2024. If I could cite yet another past episode of Satansplain for more details, try episode number 17. The Church of Satan not condoning illegal activity, that always seems like a no-brainer to me. Satanists have always been accused of doing all sorts of horrific crimes, and we don't need law enforcement watching us like a hawk to see if we're doing those things, and we especially don't need the sort of lunatics who say they hear the voice of Satan in their head and have killed 3 of their neighbors. We don't need those kind of people, joining us. And yet, I have actually seen some people try to play armchair philosopher to argue that point. They'll say, well, Bill, that's so unsatanic for the Church of Satan to say you can't break the law. What if you're hurt and have to drive to the hospital to survive, and unless you break the speed limit, you won't get there in time? Satanism is about survival, so therefore the more satanic thing to do would be to drive fast, and that's breaking the law. Checkmate, Church of Satan. I'm following the philosophy closer than you are. All right, this is just pedantic bullshit. But okay, Aristotle, go ahead and form a new satanic organization, bragging as a selling point that unlike the Church of Satan, you're not adverse to breaking the law. Just announce that, and I'm sure everybody will look at you and say, he is so intellectually honest. He's such a genius. I'm sure you won't attract the attention of law enforcement, and you won't attract any sociopaths. Yeah, you'll have a story you can tell about how you totally owned that Satansplain guy on the internet. A story you can tell to your fellow cellmates. Some other excuses I've heard. Well, I read the Satanic Bible and I like the first half, but I don't believe in magic and the Church of Satan does, so I'm going to form a new type of Satanism that rejects the supernatural and stuff like that. Okay, just because you read something and didn't understand it doesn't mean it's time to run off and try to create a new denomination to excuse yourself from the part you don't get. As I said earlier, the Church of Satan's view on magic is not supernatural. It's not a supernatural bit of dogma, nor is ritual an absolute requirement. So you don't need a new denomination for this. But regarding that earlier claim of, LaVeyan secretly believed a literal Satan, well, that's an example of another recurring theme I see with many of these pseudo-Satanic groups. The claim that ever since Anton LaVeyan died in 1997, the Church of Satan has become a radically different organization. Actually, you had people claiming that even when LaVeyan was alive. But I always ask these people, what exactly do they think a Church of Satan member can believe now, which they couldn't back before 1997, or whenever they think this great change happened? Or vice versa, what is it that they think members can't believe now, which they could back then? And I never get an answer to these questions. Or, in the rare cases that I do, it ends up being based on a misconception because it's something that was either never part of Satanic doctrine in the first place, or it's something Church of Satan members are already free to do if they wish. I've seen disgruntled left-wing ex-members of the Church of Satan who claim we've become right-wing. I've seen disgruntled right-wing ex-members of the Church of Satan who claim we've become left-wing. Even though we can find members in good standing who are from both ends of that political spectrum. Somebody claims they need a different satanic organization because they say the Church of Satan are Nazis. Somebody else claims they need a different satanic organization because they claim the Church of Satan are Zionists. Well, not all of these people can be correct in their presumptions, but they can all be wrong. All right, I've said a lot in this episode and in the previous one, but I suppose one question we have not asked yet is, what motivates this need to declare a new satanic denomination or organization in the first place? Well, in the previous episode, I pointed out that we've seen a lot of Christian denominations pop up in America specifically, namely because the opportunities there make it easy to do so. There is no official state religion, you have all this land, you get tax breaks, and Christianity is already the predominant religion. Thus, establishing a new denomination of Christianity was historically much easier in the United States. Well, the reason I brought that up is because I would say that's kind of what happened with the internet and Satanism. Anton LaVeyan died in 1997, which I'd say is right around when the internet started becoming a more household and ubiquitous thing. Obviously, there were pseudo-Satanic groups that showed up in the 70s and 80s before people had the internet at home. You know, these people trying to copy or rival the Church of Satan. But there will be days when I'm on social media and Facebook will see that I belong to a few Facebook discussion groups with Satan in the title, and they'll recommend a group called the Church of Green Beelzebub or whatever. And it will be the group for some supposed new satanic organization, maybe even claiming to be practicing some new type of Satanism, some new denomination. Again, not just some discussion group for Satanism in general, or a page where a Satanist shares his or her essays on the topic, etc. That's fine. But some Facebook group purporting to be an actual satanic organization, a club that they formed. And I wonder, is there anybody in this organization aside from maybe the person who set up the social media channel? and then a bunch of people who will join any Facebook group that has Satan in the description. Perhaps you discovered Satanism and found this concept of being your own God invigorating. Also, this idea that you don't have to love everybody in this world, and you were so fueled by this that you jumped into talking with other Satanists online. Maybe you found a Church of Satan message board and didn't really stop to realize that by their very nature, Satanists are not necessarily going to welcome you and your ideas with open arms. So in bitter resentment, you said you were storming off and going to form your own satanic organization. Well, it doesn't sound like you were being your own god to me, or independent, or more satanic. It frankly just sounds like you're being a disconnected narcissist. So, to these people who claim to be Satanists and adhere to Satanism as described by Anton LaVeyan, yet feel the need to make and declare a new type of Satanism that somehow is different than ours, or even make a new organization as an alternative to the Church of Satan, or to the people who think they need to join such a group, stop and ask yourself why. What is your justification? Even if for some reason you don't like the Church of Satan, well, you don't have to join the Church of Satan to be a Satanist. Nobody's forcing you to. What big disagreements or needs would you have that would be fulfilled by some other organization, let alone an entirely new denomination of Satanism? Did you look at one particular policy of what the Church of Satan does, or one aspect of Satanism itself, and then throw up your hands and say, well, I don't understand this, or you can't tell me what to do, and run off and try to reinvent the wheel? Did you just lose an argument on the internet with some Church of Satan members? Get kicked out of a Church of Satan Facebook group? And so you think this is the solution? Did you run into some Satanists who don't share your political views or your opinions on, I don't know, music or something else? And you can't bear to be part of a religion unless every other practitioner of it shares your exact views on things? Are you trying to slap the label of Satanism on something that it isn't? Maybe Satanism is not the path for you after all. Maybe it's some other left-hand path religion. Maybe it's something else entirely. Or maybe Satanism is for you, and you just got off on the wrong foot with some other Satanists. I don't know. It's a crazy world with a lot of stuff out there. Demoralization is happening in many forms. You may have your convictions, your worldviews, the things you're passionate about. There are many who reject some of the prevailing collectivism and otherwise are trying to find their tribe, so to speak, an identity. Or at the very least, people looking for some approach to try and make sense of this whole world and where to go next. Satanism is and will always be a path for the very few. If you can honestly say that this is your path, great. If not, that's fine too. We're not a religion that proselytizes to gain converts, but it is still our religion. And there is no rational justification for taking the label of what we established and throwing it on things that it's not. Trying to form your own type of Satanism is not a mark of independence. It's not being your own god. It's just being parasitic. Satanism is a carnal religion, but don't think that the only options are being a scavenger or being a sheep. Take the wolf, for example. The wolf does not follow the herd, but it has been known to run with the pack. This is Magister Bill M. Thank you for listening. Hail Satan.
You have been listening to Satansplain. For more information about the show, visit the official website at satansplain.com. And for more information on Satanism itself, visit churchofsatan.com. This episode is copyright 2024, Magister Bill M.